The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Art of War podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined once again with a return guest, Mech Csaszar. Mech, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. You are doing something that many people thought is impossible. Many people just gave up on this faction. Many people thought AdMech might actually be the worst faction in the game. But you said, no, I am actually Mech Csaszar. I come from all over the place. I kick major ass, and I'm going to take AdMech and show you it can be done. Going 5-0 at a grand tournament with AdMech. Congratulations. That is awesome.
Thank you.
So for all of you listeners at home, Mech is a phenomenal player. He lives in Hungary now. He actually lived in America for a little while. I know him from tournaments when he was over here, and he's moved back to Hungary. So we're going to get to know him a little bit, understand what the different experiences are like playing over here, playing abroad, playing on the international scene, and at the highest levels, and really understand what that's like from his perspective. We're also going to, of course, unpack AdMech. You know, that's the star of the show here along with Mech. How the hell can Adeptus Mechanicus compete in 10th edition versus the likes of Chaos Space Marines and Eldari and Necrons and all these amazing factions? How is AdMech doing it? We're going to understand his list. We're going to unpack how it all works. And then in part 2 of this episode, which is available for our patrons on AOW40K.com, you'll have access to part 2. Where Matteo and I will go over all of the ins and outs, the play-by-plays, how to handle specific matchups, missions, secondaries, all of the good stuff. So if you're interested in actually learning AdMech, learning the game, becoming your best, and ultimately becoming a better Warhammer player, check out part 2 on AOW40K.com. Matteo, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
I'm so excited. Tell me about how you got into Warhammer.
First, when I was a child, I think I got a box from my father. I think it was 4th edition, the Battle for Mech, the Ultramarines versus Tyranids. It was an old box set, and I put them together, painted them up, but didn't have anybody to play with because Warhammer, since now and then, was an expensive hobby. So it went back to the shelf, and I think around end of 7th edition, I found the box and started looking through the internet and YouTube, how it's going, what's the battle like, how the armies play, what they look like, and I get back into the game, went to a few tournaments, meeting some new friends, and from then on, I just kept playing whenever I can.
Awesome. And if you've done that in Hungary, or you were doing that in America when you were playing and trying to get better?
No, I started in Hungary in the small groups. And actually, for me, the change of leaning into the competitive scene was really started when I went to work in the US, and when I lived there almost 3 years. And I think that scene and the community there, which pushed me over the edge that I want to play this game in a high level competitively, but still gives me joy and fun in my free time.
That's a pretty unique thing, right? To be from Hungary and then, work is work, and you come over to America and you play Warhammer, maybe not super competitively in Hungary. Was your small local group? You bring your hobby over with you. And what, did you just find players to play with locally and they happen to be competitive and that got you in love with it?
No, actually, I went out during COVID and there wasn't any store open. And I think in the end of 2020, around September, I saw that one of the groups close to Maryland, they started to doing RTTs, and I didn't have any armies with me. So I just write in the tournament, the event pack, like, "Hi guys, I'm here from Hungary. I would like to play some 40K. I have no armies with me, but if anybody can lend me anything, I just want to go and play free games because it's been like 8 months since the last time I played with a person." And they just like, "Yeah, come over here. We have a Death Guard army. You can use it." And it just kept going from there.
That's really awesome. So basically, just one thing led to another with it all, and he got better time and time. So what armies do you typically play? Because I've known you for quite some time, and I've never known you to be an AdMech player. This is new, and maybe not actually, the time to play them.
I started with Necrons in 7th edition, And in the early 8, I played Chaos, Chaos Demons, Chaos Space Marines. I pretty much played Chaos most of the time.
Man after my heart right there, absolutely.
And my favorite army is still World Eaters and the Chaos Space Marines. I played AdMech in 8th edition for a few months, I think for a year. And then I switched back to playing Chaos Space Marines and Demons and, the old Chaos soup when you had like 6 books together in one army, the old good times. And yeah, actually, I played a lot of armies. I played, I think, almost all of the armies. When I was in the US, I played Drukhari and Harlequins for a good 1.5 years and played that guard, Chaos. When I get the qualification for the World Cup, I played Demons, actually, with the new Monster Mesh. So I like Chaos. I like melee armies, but this edition is not much about close combat. So my friend told me, actually we speak about like I like challenging armies when you actually have to play the game and be good to win. And I was thinking about what armies I like. I enjoy play. I like the models I play with, and AdMech is a phenomenal range of models. So I figured I build an army list and let's see where I can go with it.
So at what point did you decide to become an AdMech player and then stick with it? Because to me, it's a little backwards, right? You're like a Chaos player. Like Chaos is your favorite faction. And Chaos, according to win rates and, my personal anecdotes, are like an amazing faction. They're winning all the tournaments right now. So like, when did you decide, screw it, AdMech, and then just put up with results with AdMech that like win? That's awesome.
Yeah. For the first of all, for me, is Dark Mechanicus. So it's always there.
Okay, so you're still in the Chaos.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I played World Eaters when they came out and a good part of the end of 9th edition. And then switched back to Chaos Space Marines because when the indexes came out, I knew they were going to be good, and they were good already. They're still good. But there's so many Chaos Space Marine players and other players, and
you don't feel like yeah.
I don't like when I go to a tournament, I play like 20 of the same lists. I figured I find the list which is challenging. It's going to get the codex soon. In early 10th edition. AdMech is coming out this year. And everybody said that they are in the worst 3 of the armies like a month ago. And I'm like, all right, that's a challenge. So let's go for it. What can I do with it? Can I go X and 1, maybe win more than lose? And after a few practice game, I figured that the army plays good for the 10th edition missions. And actually, it's fun to play. It's not the same as all the other armies, and nobody is prepared for AdMech and the play style. Of course, when you play against a good player, they know what the army can do and they know the tricks, but it's still not the conventional way. Like when you see somebody walk up to the table with 3 chosen bombs and 3 fortunes and unity from obliterators, you kind of know what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's like there's, even if you explain everything super forthcoming, which I'm sure you do, there's an element of I haven't experienced this before, and especially I haven't planned lines of play and reps into it. So from that perspective, you gain a lot of advantage by playing an offbeat meta army. Just last week, we interviewed Jeffrey Kaludner, who won with Sisters of Battle of all factions at the Tampa Open, and very similar. Like I didn't know what Sisters do prior to doing that podcast, and just like that, we're learning about AdMech here today as well.
And most of the players, like when you walk up to the table with you walk up to the table with your Chaos Space Marines and you see a Sister or an AdMech or something top middle 5 of the bracket, you are like, all right, I'm just gonna win this anyway. Don't worry about it. But when you meet somebody who actually almost at the same level in play and it's a game again. Because if I can deny your points and score mine, that's gonna be a hard time for you.
Yeah. These points denial armies, and I don't even know that AdMech is doing that, but I'm kind of assuming here. These Sisters of Battle, AdMech, they just like don't run out of stuff, and then through that you kind of can score a lot of points, deny a lot of points, and just play a clean game of Warhammer. But we're going to get into all that, I suppose. What do you think your play style is in relation to AdMech? Because obviously AdMech shoot, and they're made of totally different data sheets than Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters and those factions you previously played. So how does that translate?
Well, I still have my word eater in me, so everybody thinks that AdMech is a shooting army and it all sits back, try to cut some angles, and just shoot you. Um I find myself more of a adaptive player. So if my opponent is cagey, I go aggressive and I just run up the table. And I even the last tournament on the GT in the finals, I played against Tyranids, which is a melee army, and every turn I charge something with my breachers, with my dragoons, to try them up and lock up the board space. I'm more of a reactive player. I like to give my opponents situations when they have to decide what they do. It doesn't have to be always a bad decision, but from their perspective, they try to figure out what my game plan is. But it's almost always the same. Like there's so many units in the army, you can screen the whole table in one turn. So if you want to deep strike something against the army, you shouldn't do it. If you want to put something in reserve, you still shouldn't do it because in a turn the list is fast, and there are some tricks you can do even in close combat. They are not hit too hard, but sometimes the rerolls and you have a spike of dice in a turn, and the breachers can melt you in close combat also.
I am so fascinated, and I have no idea what you're even talking about. So, Matt, I think this is the great time to segue into what your list actually is that you took to the Alba GT and won.
Okay, so the list is the red cohort, obviously, because the only one we have. Actually, the detachment rule is not that good. We still don't know how it works because the ability says that at the start of the battle round, your opponent have to decide if his army, every unit stands firm or take cover. So they either battle shocked or take mortal wounds. But if your opponent goes first and he says like, okay, all of my whole army is battle shocked at the start of the battle round, and in the command phase, it just goes up, it just falls off. So it has no benefit.
That's terrible. Your army rule is so...
Yeah, the army rule says that they are battle shocked for the whole battle round, but in the rules commentary there is a paragraph when it says like whenever you're battle shocked, it always comes down in the next command phase. So I guess it sets it off. So if I go first, there is a play, because if a unit is battle shocked, he cannot use superior strat or any defensive strats on them, and they're also OC0, which can help steal objectives. But the detachment rule basically does nothing. It's one mortal wound and a free up in each start of the battle round. Sometimes it kills something on one wound. It happened, but nothing major.
I was going to ask during the line of questioning what if you actually get value out of your detachment rule. Is it useful? But I'm glad we just got that out of the way.
Yeah, I killed the Custode, the Calidus tank with it. It was on one wound and it died. Yeah.
So, I mean, this only goes more to the point, right? Like you're playing an army without a functional detachment rule. That is such an inherent disadvantage right off the bat, by definition. So what is the list you actually took to the tournament?
Okay, so it's 3 Tech Priest Maniples. It's all the same. They give lethal hit to the units, so that's already good. One of them has the Master Annihilator. It's an enhancement which give also sustain hit 1 to the unit. So they are exploding on 6s and auto wounding on 6s. And the other guy has a Transonic Cannon, which is a flamer, and he has the enhancement for the Omni Sterilizer, which gives him extra free attacks. So it's a D6 plus 3 flamer. Anti-infantry 2 up, anti-monster 4 up, devastating wound 2. So it's basically before they nerfed devastating wounds, it was even more deadlier, but it's still is D6 plus 3 auto-hitting shots, which basically nukes Terminators and 2 wound models.
Yeah, that sounds pretty nasty. Nice little character. He's only 75 points, so that guy.
We have 3 units of Skitter Vanguard. Actually, they are the backbone of the army. We're going to talk about that because without the Vanguard, the army actually doesn't function at all. 1 Dune Rider to just have one of the battle lines in transport, so they can run up the board or they can be in places when they need to, because you can disembark from the Dune Rider even if it's advanced. So you can cover a pretty good space on the board. 3 individual Iron Strider Ballistary. These are the last cannon chickens for 50 points. They're really good. 3 units of 6 Cataphron Breachers with the Arc Rifle. This is the Strength 8, AP2, damage 3, anti-vehicle 4 up shooting weapon. It's Rapid Fire 2, So 36-inch range is 2 shots, 18-inch range is 4 shots. 3 units of those, and they have hydraulic claws, which is also strength 8 AP2 damage 3 in melee, 2 attacks each. 2 units of Skystalkers. They are the birdie guys, which can move after they shoot, and depends on how close they are to my battle lines, they can move either 6 or 12 inches, so the movement with them is pretty significant. 1 unit of Cerberus Raiders. They are just throwaway scout movers. 1 unit of Infiltrator, also the same, to screen my opponent infiltrating moves, or just sit in the corner, wait for investigate signal to pop up. And 3 individual Sidonian Dragons, which are the melee chickens, also really good. They are naturally stealth, so they're -1 to hit. They are toughness 7, 7 wound vehicles, which can base move 10, and they are not that bad in melee also.
So when I look at your army, and without really knowing much about what its intricacies are or its rules, and we're going to unpack all that, it looks like you got 18 breachers, which definitely seem like a big chunk of your damage output, especially anti-vehicle, and they're pretty tough to remove. You've got 30 infantry, which you described as the backbone of your army, and I'm so eager to hear why. Just because I look at that, and that's like, I view that as cheap mission play, OC2, whatever, easy to kill stuff. A few characters, and then a lot of skirmishing units, solo chickens, and deep striking fast guys, and that's always good for mission play stuff. So a lot of things going on with this army. How do you put it all together?
So the first I built the army, I didn't have the melee chickens. I had 2 units of infiltrators, 2 units of Cerberus Raiders, the dogs. I had 2 Dune Riders, and also had the Kalidas Assassin before 2 Vect. But I figured out the more I played the list that for the purpose of what the infiltrators and the raiders do, 1 unit is enough. And with the data slate, we get some points decrease. So I actually could fill in the chickens. And the Vect is, the Kalidas, it was nice, but from that 95 points, I could put in another unit of Vanguard. So I figured I'm just going to play pure AdMech. I don't gonna do Assassins, because Vecting is good against Space Marines is actually super good, Vecting the Armor of Contempt. But you can't do much about it. You just have to fight your way through on them. And so I played a few practice games, and I had a unit of breachers with torsion cannons before, which is the anti-infantry shots. And that's only damage 2. So the more I played, I figured that anti-infantry 2 up is really good. But with the lethal hits and the sustain hits and the rerolls the breachers get from the battle line, actually the damage 3 guns are much better. So I don't care about anti-infantry when I have lethal hits with full rerolls. It's more damage. So that's why I changed them back for all of them with orc rifles. And also 18 breachers on the board, they look amazing. You're going to see it.
Yeah, I can imagine 18 of those things. Like, do you deploy them like on the line, or like where's this army hiding on the table, or is it not hiding?
So it's more of an opponent choice. If I play against something that cannot screen much, I usually put one of them into Strat Reserve along with one of.
That's a hard unit to actually get into a reasonable spot with Strategic Reserve. No?
Yeah, they pick up a big chunk of space. Yeah, it's like 10 Terminators. It's the same footprint.
Yeah.
But when you have space, you play against something, I don't know, Knights or Chaos Knights or something that doesn't have fast moving screens, you can do it. Or even you can just, if you put something in reserve and your opponent starts to screen in the backfield, then you just come back turn 2 in your board edge, because the shooting range is high. You can just keep your opponent.
It's almost just like getting to deploy them, just with turn 2 knowledge kind of thing.
Yeah, usually we are playing on WTC terrain here, so there is space to hide the breachers at least. They usually go behind walls, behind buildings. They are toughness 7, 3 wounds each, infantry, so they're not that easy to kill. And also the Manipulus can give the unit 4-up invulnerable save once per game for a whole phase. So usually they are when I go out to shoot and I expect to get shoot back, I usually just turn up the invans, try to weather the storm, and then shoot back again.
So talk to me about like your army's cadence when it's playing the game. Like, what is your general strategy? Like how are you holding objectives, contesting objectives? Like, what are you doing with this stuff?
So usually I'd go with tactical objective because the army is good. So the army rule is the basic army rule, which every AdMech gets, is you can choose from two doctrinal imperatives. You can be a protector, which means all of your weapons are heavy. So if you stay still, you get +1 to hit. And if somebody shoots you and you are in your deployment zone, you ignore one of the AP that's incoming. So basically, if you're cover and they're shooting you, you are actually -2 of their AP.
So it's not bad. You to kind of deploy on the line and just be tough enough to tank it?
Even if I can be in front of the line because I don't have to be wholly within my deployment zone, just within, so that I can lean back a unit and still get the benefit of the -1 AP. I usually never use it because the breachers only move 5. I usually go with the Conqueror, the other one, which is that all of my guns are assault. Everybody can advance and shoot.
Oh,
and if I shoot you and you are in your deployment zone, I get +1 AP.
Do you choose these doctrine as turn by turn or game by game?
Yeah, start of the battle round.
Okay, so you can do like turn 1, I'll sit in cover.
Yeah, and there are some of the stratagems which are benefiting each. For the protector, there is only one which is good. For CP, you can have a 4-up invulnerable save on Skittery units. The breachers are not Skittery, so I'm not going to use it on them. And everybody in the army has a 5-up invulnerable save. Like all of the units have a 5-up invulnerable save, apart from the breachers, but they can have a 4-up once per game, so they don't need it. So I usually always stay in Conqueror because advance and shoot is a huge advantage. Just for mission play, you can do actions with your guns. Everybody has pistols. Every unit has a sergeant with a pistol, so you can do actions in close combat. You can do actions when you move. You can do actions when
actions just come so naturally. You have so many units. What is this? We have 6 chicken walkers, all solo. We got an infiltrator squad, 2 Cerberus Raider squads, 2 Taraxi squads. Am I getting that right?
So I have 3 battle lines, transport, that's 4, 6 chickens, that's 10, 12, 14. I have 15 units.
15 units. That is a lot.
Sorry, actually 18 with the breachers, yeah.
18, right, the breachers. So 15 skirmishing units, really. Like if we're going to count the transport and the 10-man vanguard, which we still haven't really got to. I'm very excited about that. If we count the troops and the transport and all the other stuff floating around, there's all your skirmishing pieces. You have 14 of those, or 15 of those. And then there's 18 breachers, which take up the physical board space of 30 Terminators. It's all advancing and shooting. How damaging is this stuff? Is this like Tau levels of firepower, where if I'm getting shot by this, I'm just gone? Or is this
So if I'm taking the unit with the enhancement, when they have the sustain and the lethal hit, and let's say I'm in rapid fire range, okay. So let's start with the Vanguard. So the Vanguard is OC2, and also they have an ability when you are within 3 of them, you are -1 OC, and it can go down to 0. So they are there.
They can take it to 0?
Yeah, because actually when you go check the rules, in the rules commentary for the modifiers, nothing can go below 1, but OC actually can go to 1, could go to 0. So if you taking Lich Guard, like it's 10-man Lich Guard on an objective with OC1, you just stand next to it with 1 Vanguard, I have that objective.
That is absolutely insane. Oh my God.
And we have the transport, which moved 12 inches. I can advance 6 inches, 18 inches. For CP, I can still charge. So it's a long board space I can do. Or I can use my Vanguard to move out in the transport, advance and charge, and take away your home objective, turn 2 or 3, because I'm going to -1 on your OC. I'm going to get 10 guys there with the 4-up armor and the 5-up invulnerable save, and you might not going to kill them. And so it's a pretty.
Did I catch that right? You can advance the transport, then get out, and then charge something?
No. So you can get out after advance, but you cannot charge after that, because when you get out after the transport advance, they count as made a normal move, so you cannot charge because the transport advance.
Still, that is a very far.
But turn one, I can advance up the transport and then disembark 3, move 6, advance, and still charge.
So are these Vanguard just running to the and being like, I'm going to hold this until you kill me, trying to hide behind walls. Like, what is the usage of the Vanguard?
The Vanguard, so the Breachers has a rule, which is breaching command, that says that as long as they are within 6 of one of my battle lines, they have full rerolls to hit. So usually I keep one Breacher unit, one Vanguard unit around my Breachers within 6. So when you have 24 shots, hitting on 4s, full rerolls, sustain hit 1, lethal hit 1, that's actually add up pretty fast.
Yeah. So essentially, you're having how many shots? Is 3 shots per guy?
It's 2 shots per guy, 4 shots in rapid fire range.
Okay, so a bunch of shots, rerolling hits, sustained hits, potentially lethal hits on the one unit. That adds up super fast. They're
actually they all have lethal hit. One unit have sustain.
Sorry, I got that backwards. This is even better because lethal hits helps you kill vehicles and things like that. And what's the AP and damage on these profiles?
So it's strength 8, AP 2 damage 3. They are anti-vehicle 4 up. So against vehicles they are good, and then against everything else, which is higher toughness, I just have the lethal hits and I'm just fishing for 6s. And even then it's strength 8, so most probably it's going to wound on 5s at the worst. It's only AP 2, but if I shoot you in your deployment zone, it's AP 3, you're going to have cover. Yeah, it's not that amazing, but it's damage 3. So
yeah, damage 3, AP 2. I mean, it'll struggle maybe to kill Redemptors in cover with Armor of Contempt, but basically every other profile in the game, even Terminators, that'll add up against. Do you have ways to ignore cover with this army?
Sadly, don't. I think that's on purpose.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Redemptors. I don't shoot Redemptors. I just ignore them because I cannot kill them. Even with the damage 3 shots, they just don't die.
It makes a lot of sense. We'll get into more specific matchup talk in part 2, but I think... Yeah.
So the Vanguard usually... that's why I have the transport, because sometimes, you have Eldar and no lineups of shooting, so they can be picked up pretty easy. They have a 5-up invulnerable save, which is not bad, but I always want one unit to be safe for the rerolls. But they usually hang around the Breachers, move with them, one unit in the transports, try to grab your home objective or an objective at the edge of the table, or they just come on strategic reserve with another Breacher unit that one is reserved, and they have full rerolls.
So it's just like a lot of shots. They're all... strength 8, AP 2, 3 damage, but I've played with that profile enough to know that will add up fast in tons of shots, lethal hits. That really does hurt into most targets. And then you've so much skirmishing going on. Is the idea with this skirmishing stuff to overwhelm your opponent like aggressively, or like just have something in the right place at the right time, like through virtue of having so many units? How are you using all this other stuff?
Usually I use the infiltrators to block one of the corners. Stand next to an objective in the corner. If nobody is there, they're gonna hold that objective for the game. If my opponent has scout moving units, I usually deploy them in front of them so they cannot scout move. It's the same with the raiders. They can scout 9. So if I drew, let's say, deploy teleport homers turn 1, I can just scout move them 9, move 12, advance and shoot, just touch your deployment zone and get 5 points, and that's like a 50-point unit, and they die, and they just throw them away. Also with the infiltrators, they can advance and charge. If I'm in assault doctrine, try to tie up against scare space range. Usually I try to tie up the rhinos so they cannot get out, or they cannot move out on the deployment zone. Try to block the space between buildings. It's same with the melee chickens. They move 10, they run up, they block the pathways between buildings, and just keep screen. Like with 6 chickens, you pretty much can screen almost the half of the table.
Yeah, I mean, 6 chickens is there. Each one has like, I don't know the base diameters, but it's a big oval. And then there's each breacher is a 60 millimeter base, like we were talking about. Your army's footprint is enormous, and I guess you're not really trying to hide all of it because it's just like not feasible. But it's tough, and there's so many things. So you really just inconvenience your opponent, charge them, aggress them, and really try to tie them up and gum them their ability to kill everything. Is that the idea?
Yeah, try to tie them up. And also when you have 6 individual chickens, which tough as 7 wounds, usually in cover with a 3-up save, a 5-up invulnerable save, you have to put some effort to kill it. So even if it's left on 1 wound, he's still going to move, block you, screen you, and the last cannon shots are not that helpful. It's 1 shot on a 4-up, but sometimes you roll a 6, so it's sustain 1. It's going to be 2 shots with Twin Linked. They usually kill something throughout the game, but they can take up the board to screen my breachers so nobody get close, and also do the mission. So why you have to worry about 18 breachers shooting you? You have the other 10 units which are running around the board, to scoring clans, scoring engage, soloing storm hostile, anything basically you want, and stealing away your primary, but you cannot kill everything in a turn.
Yeah, I mean, I play Chaos Space Marines, and I am an army focused on damage, and I'm really looking at this, and I'm like, I don't know if I can kill all of this. Like I said, we'll talk about your plan for CSM in a little while, but this is actually really impressive, Mete. I feel like people are sleeping on AdMech just like they're sleeping on Sisters. This is so much stuff, and it's like so violent.
The only bad thing is like it's fragile. So our scene in Hungary, of course, doesn't have the amount of players like the US. So there are some armies I never played against, so I don't know how it's going to go. Like when you meet Austrian armorist with 9 indirect shooting tanks, they're just going to pick up all the Vanguard turn 1, and they're going to start whittling down the breachers, and I can't do nothing about it. So that's a different game plan. I try to figure out what to do in those matchups. But the army actually, it's good to play, because if you play it good, you win, and if you lose, you usually make a mistake. I had 4 tournaments before the last GT, and I went 2-1 on 3 of the RTTs. I went 4-1 on the GT before the last one, and I lost in the finals against Space Marines. And after I finished the game, everybody asked me, like, why did you lose? You had bad dice, you had bad cards. And, no. You never can blame the dice or the cards. I mean, there's a point when you only roll once. Of course, that can happen. But when you sit down and think about the game, I lost by 12 points. And I figured, like, if I move turn 1 differently and I didn't make some positioning mistakes, it's an even closer game. So you always can improve from your losses. And when you play, I played this army, I think, 30, 35 games with it. And after every game, I figured out a new way to approach my deployment, how I move with my units, what do I do with actually, the funny thing about the raiders. So if I go first and you say that you don't care, your whole army is battle shocked because you don't care. And let's say I draw Capture Enemy Outpost, which is an 8-point secondary mission. And I can move up the raiders 9 inches, move 12, advance, maybe roll a 5 or a 6. And I can charge for a CP, and I charge something which sits on your back objective. And you are OC 0. I just have to stand there with 1 dog, and I get 8 points for literally 50 points, turn 1. So there is very small plays which you realize that, I could have done that.
Yeah, there's always ways to learn from games. I mean, I love that you covered that whole section, right? Like learning from losses and even learning from wins is really what this entire channel and podcast is all about. And the fact that this army has so much depth to it, right? Like you can go endlessly into how to approach problems with an army this wide as far as toolbox goes. Like you can do so much stuff with just the movement in how you approach problems. Like forget the damage. Like your entire game is basically just scoring points, denying points, while having enough damage to keep someone honest, really.
And everybody says that WTC terrain is too dense, and you cannot. Few of the guys ask me, like, how can you play with an army that only shoots because you don't have much firing lanes? And actually, you don't need it. You don't need to table anybody. You just need basically lines for like 1 or 2 objectives, which you're gonna basically anybody that stands on the objective is going to die no matter what. And then you don't have to kill your opponent to win the game. You just have to take away. Usually my game plan is if I can give my opponent 1 or 2 turns of 5 or 0 primary, it's usually a win, because this army can score 75 to 80 points on the mission. My lowest was around 80. I scored even on the losing games. And you can, I mean, it's inbuilt in the army. If you know how to move, how to deploy. Usually my play style is I figure movement is the best way to win the games, because you cannot always be 100% sure if you shoot something it's going to die because dice, or you hit something it's going to die because of dice. I played a really good friend of mine, round 4. He played Chaos Knights, and he had a bad game against me already because I have so many anti-vehicle shots. And that was a typical idea. Like, I put 50 shots in you, and what can you do? That's a dice game. And he had a turn when 4 small guys and the big guy died in one turn, in one battle round. And we are like, yeah, we should call it because there's no point. And of course, the stratagems AdMech has. So I never use CP reroll. I never use the strats for any defensive stuff. Most of my CP use is basically Overwatch, or when there's a strat, when you shoot me, I can shoot you back. So usually with one unit, I usually shoot 3 times a turn at least.
Oh my God. So like you shoot with it, you Overwatch it, and then they shoot you shoot them back. And it's kind of like having 3 units of Wraith Guard at that point, right? Like you can't shoot anything, or you just eat it.
I mean, I only can shoot back with the guys that stayed alive. So it's not always good, because if they wipe the unit, they're not going to shoot back. But with the breachers, the toughness 7 helps them a lot, so they can survive.
I'm sure this answer varies matchup to matchup, but just in general, are you finding yourself like very low on models, pretty much table, but just trying to scrape by with more points than your opponent, or are you actively killing them in a lot of games?
Actually, it's different. Against vehicle-heavy armies, or against monster armies, or elite armies, I usually wipe them before they wipe me. But most of the games I had like 2-3 units left by the end of turn 5. But I think I never got wiped. Like all of my stuff died. But usually it's pretty bloody, because when things start to die, like when you lose 6 chickens in one turn and one of your breacher unit, everybody thinks like, oh, you lost 7 units. Yeah, but that 7 unit was like 500 points, so I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a points-based game, right? I'm so excited to continue this conversation, Mate. I feel like now we're really getting to the meat of how this army plays, and it's so situationally flexible that there is no specific play script besides like deploy your breacher, shoot people, move up, advance, and shoot.
My only script is I never do fixed mission again.
that's the hot take, you know.
The only games I lost was when I took fixed.
Wow.
Because then you're trapped, you have to do it. There is no escape. Actually, against we're going to cover it anyway, but one hint is against Tau. Tau is the only army when you go fixed, but I think every army goes fixed against Tau, because bring it down is just, you get it for free.
Get the free 20, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can do whatever you want.
That is awesome, Mate. I'm so excited. I don't think we've ever had anyone on the podcast who's like, I always go tactical. I think this is going to be a super exciting part 2, where we're going to cover exactly how you move this stuff around the table, what approach you take into different matchups, because right now the game of Warhammer is so wide and diverse. The way you build an army doesn't have to be, I do this strategy every single time. And the way you're playing your army, it's totally not that. It's literally a new game every time you play it. And I absolutely love it. I'm so excited to talk about this in part 2. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. You can check us on AOW40k.com. That's our Patreon. It's $5 a month, and that gets you access to not only part 2 of this episode, we're going to cover all the in-depth tips and tricks, but we're also going to get access to 212 other episodes of the podcast. So do yourself a favor and sign up. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.